Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. It seemed like every Power 5 program across the country was looking for one of those difference makers on the inside of the defensive line. And of course, Mario Cristobal, the Miami Hurricanes, making it happen in the transfer portal with Simeon Barrow Jr. And we hopped on immediately and kind of gave our instant reactions to that commitment. Now we're diving into the film and really talking about what Simeon Barrow Jr. brings to this Miami Hurricanes program. And Dill, you start talking about the value that Simeon Barrow Jr. brings, you got to start with the pass rush. And I think this is massive for the Hurricanes because you look at Miami on that defensive line and say, hey, we're probably going to have to lean on our edge rushers a lot in the pass rush department. Now they had a guy in Simeon Barrow Jr. who you take a look at the numbers, 17 quarterback hurries, 14% pass rush win rate. As Michigan fans, we're very familiar with them. Michigan didn't have many troubles blocking up interior defensive linemen. And Simeon Barrow Jr. was one of those guys Michigan struggled with, difference maker on the inside of the defensive line. Want to dive into the film before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys, the Miami Hurricane fans. The last 10 days in the transfer portal, it's been an absolute blast covering, and the amount of support you guys have consistently shown the boys, it truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And Dill, the guy that we're very familiar with here, Simeon Barrow Jr., before we get into the film, I'll give you the tee box here. What's he bring to the table?
I think you said it best, and you saw what Miami was able to do in that winter window, landing some of those defensive tackles like Clark, Cook. And those guys are good, tough, physical interior defensive linemen. But I think you were still thinking, like, who's going to be that Leonard Taylor? Who's going to fill that type of shoe, that playmaker role? I don't know that you necessarily had it. Again, you kind of have some good young kids coming in, obviously, like Justin Scott. But I think you wanted an experienced guy, especially with how good the Miami team is right now and how maybe ready they are to make a run at the ACC and maybe even at the national title.
You mentioned it really well. I think he balances out what Miami has on the inside of that defensive line really well. You look at guys like Moton or Horton or CJ Clark. Those are your guys that win on first and second down, right? Taking on double teams, being a force in the run game. But you look down the inside of that defensive line and say, who's manufacturing some pass rush from the inside? And I mean, CJ Clark's great at what he does. He's not an elite pass rusher. You bring in a guy like Simeon Barrow Jr., he gives you that pass rush juice, and you start diving into the film and looking at how Simeon Barrow Jr. decides to win. It first starts with the stunts. I mean, you're talking about 6'3", 300 pounds, elite athleticism from the inside. You can do a lot of different things in terms of how you want to use Simeon Barrow Jr. as a pass rusher. You take a look here, kind of lining up at that 3-tech over the left guard. I mean, you're going to see, one, the ability to attack outside shoulders of guards, but more importantly, the power that he has in his hands. I mean, Ladarius Henderson, that's an NFL tackle. He just got selected in the NFL draft, and he is ragdolling him. And then getting to the quarterback, forcing a rush throw. And then you see the next rep, very similar play. You see how they want to use Simeon Barrow Jr. They want to get him involved, attacking outside shoulders, getting him out on the edge, using him in stunts. This time, I mean, lining up right over the right guard here, he's going to get skinny, right? We saw the first rep where he's using his power, getting to that tackle. Right here, he's just going to get skinny between these two tackles and guards, get to the quarterback, run that edge. Really, really good bend and flexibility in the hips for a guy that's 300 pounds. And obviously, you got to make this play. It doesn't come up with the play, but again, disruptive presence on the inside, especially when you're using him in some of those stunt situations.
And he was so good in those games they were playing at Michigan State. And you kind of think about, like, what Miami has on that edge. Like, they have big, powerful edge. I mean, Ruben Bain is about as powerful of an edge rusher as we'll see.
Dog.
Mesidor can do the same things. I mean, those two, I think, can really create problems. And it's, again, when you can get yourself into those second and longs, third and longs, like turn up and do some of those other things and work those two guys or work those edges with Simeon Barrow. That's where he really shined at Michigan State. I think Miami certainly has the edge rushers to complement him in that sort of game. That's what you're kind of looking for, like those big high impact plays from him. I think he can generate.
And that's what I'm looking at. Like, you look at Lance Guidry, Jason Taylor, and saying, all right, we have Simeon Barrow Jr. We have guys like Ruben Bain, Akeem Mesidor on the outside, a guy like Alston as well. They're going to get creative in terms of how they want to get the pass rush going on those third and long situations. You take a look at kind of some other ways that Simeon Barrow Jr. can manufacture some pressure. Dill, he's 6'3", 300 pounds. I'm not sure what the arm length is. He's got long arms, and he knows how to use those arms. You can tell he's a 3-year starter for Michigan State because he's a polished guy on the inside that really knows how to use some of his physical attributes. To take a look here, lining up right over that right guard right here. He's going to be working on the center. Look at him just get his hands on Ben Scott, a very good center for Nebraska, and just take him right into the lap of the quarterback. And again, not getting to the quarterback, but you talk about how, Miami is built on that defensive line. They got a lot of edge presence, right? And you want, what you're trying to do right now is, all right, we're going to tee off with our edge rushers. When that quarterback's trying to step up into the pocket, you have a guy like Simeon Barrow Jr. who knows how to go speed to power, kind of collapse some of those pockets, walk those interior offensive linemen right into the lap of the quarterback. You start looking at how that plays out. Ruben Bain winning on the edge. All right, quarterback's trying to step up. Simeon Barrow Jr. walking interior offensive lineman right into the lap of the quarterback. You take a look at another rep here again against another quality center and Drake Nugent, who's going to be playing in the NFL next year, does a lot of the same things, right? Uses that length, gets his hands on that center, and just puts him right into the lap of the quarterback. I love how Simeon Barrow Jr. plays with low pads, uses that arm length, difference maker on the inside of the offensive or inside of the defensive line, and a guy that can win in a ton of different ways.
And I think what stands out to me in addition is just that first step quickness. Like it's really good for those interior guys. And that I think it does allow him to get into guys quickly, work his bull rush. And then obviously on those stunts, you see it like just being able to be there quickly and making it really hard for offensive linemen, just because you kind of look at a lot of those D tackles are bigger. They don't move so great. And he does provide that kind of change of pace, especially when you kind of put him in that Miami room where they are more bigger physical defensive tackles.
From an athletic standpoint, you see interior offensive linemen really struggle to deal with the juice he has athletically. And now I got to say hand up and say I might have missed on this take earlier in this transfer portal season. I said, Simeon Barrow Jr., I like him a lot because he's an elite pass rusher, and you don't see a lot of elite pass rushers on the inside. I didn't think he was great against the run. Going back and watching some of the film, certainly not a liability. He can be a factor in the run game as well. And again, that's not necessarily the skill set that you want to highlight with Simeon Barrow Jr. He's a much better pass rusher than he is against the run. You look at Miami, they have guys to win on first and second down against the run. That being said, he's certainly not a guy that you have to keep off the field on first and second downs. Wins it a lot of different ways too. The first rep you're going to see here where he takes on double teams well, knows how to play with low pads. And again, this isn't necessarily the flashiest highlight here, but what does he allow your safeties and linebackers to do? Play clean, fire downhill, create some of those negative plays. And that's exactly what happens, right? And you see on the replay here, how this play is designed is, hey, we want to get this guard working up to this safety. Simeon Barrow Jr. doing a phenomenal job eating up that double team. It allows the safety to play clean and downhill. Dill, you talk about guys who are going to benefit from Simeon Barrow Jr. being on the field. Guys like Kiko Mawinoa, firing downhill, creating those tackles for a loss. It's going to be his best friend. Take a look at another rep where a lot of times you see interior defensive linemen really struggle when they're asked to move east and west, right? Laterally. You look at Simeon Barrow Jr., how athletic he is. He knows how to run that line of scrimmage, win at the point of attack, and then go make plays. I mean, this is a guy that can win against double teams. He can win athletically, moving laterally. I think he checks a lot more boxes than I previously thought in terms of what he can bring against the run as well.
Yeah, and obviously not the biggest D tackle in the world, but again, ultra quick and does use his hands well. You see on that play him getting outside, using his hands. You see that in the pass rush as well. So again, kind of as you said, really polished, very good athlete. Not like necessarily that like space eating traditional nose guard type role, but again, at what he does and what Miami is kind of looking for, I think that really does match up.
And the last thing, and Miami Hurricane fans, they're probably sick and tired of hearing me say this, but I just do think it's so important, especially for a team like Miami where they've struggled at times with depth on the defensive line. You look at what teams need to win in November and December, right? You talk about winning conference championships, making runs in college football playoffs. You need depth on the defensive line, right? You point to Michigan, you point to Georgia. What made them so special? Yes, they had difference makers like Ruben Bain and Simeon Barrow Jr., Akeem Mesidor. They also had a ton of depth. So when you're taking a guy like Simeon Barrow Jr. off, you look at this Hurricanes defense now. I mean, Simeon Barrow Jr., veteran guy that has started a ton of games in the Big Ten. You look at CJ Clark, veteran guy, started a ton of games in the ACC. Marley Cook making the jump to the Power 5 level. You talk about guys like Moten and Horton, guys that you think are going to be ready going into year 2, year 3, respectively. A guy like Justin Scott. I look at this interior of the defensive line and say, what, 6, 7 guys that we just listed that we feel comfortable with Miami playing. That is something that, I mean, 3 years ago, we weren't talking about Miami having 6, 7 guys that you felt good about on the inside of the defensive line. You fast forward heading into 2024. I mean, it's clear. Mario Cristobal wants to build this program from the trenches. That's really what kind of stands out to me about this Miami Hurricanes defense heading into 2024.
And guys want to be there. I think that's like the crucial part. It's like everyone wants good defensive linemen, but when you can't develop them and you don't see that kind of proof of concept of, look, these guys, when they come to Miami, they play really well. I mean, if you look at the way Miami played on both sides of the line of scrimmage, frankly, last year, it's noticeably different. It's noticeably more physical. It's noticeably higher quality play. And again, like we talk about, this was no doubt an ultra intense recruiting battle, because there were like 5 to 6 guys who really could change your team at that interior defensive line spot. It's probably 10-ish teams that kind of needed that type of guy, in 10 big teams. It's not like 10 like teams that are a tier below Miami. It's like LSU.
You think sorry to cut you off, but I was thinking about this. Like, a lot of outside fans will just say, oh, NIL, NIL, NIL. Yes, Miami Hurricane, they've shown that they are players in the NIL department, which is not a knock on the program. Like, that is how the sport is being played. Like, if you want to be a program that's winning national championships, you have to check the NIL box. Hey, guess what? LSU desperately needed Simeon Barrow Jr. They have NIL capabilities. You look at Missouri, they've been big-time players. You look at Texas, USC, get programs that really wanted Simeon Barrow Jr. You said it best. He comes to Miami because guys want to come play for this program. At least it seems like that from the outside perspective. This one, I mean, fired me up in a big way. Many of the Miami Hurricane fans already know that I was extremely high on this program. You had a guy like Simeon Barrow Jr., I'm even more on the hype train heading into 2024. We'll cut it at that. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.